Tonight we have our super special treat because my friend, and need that, Josh, thanks. And my friend Sherry Yellin is here, and I call her Sherry Yellin, but she's actually Dr. Sherry Yellin, sorry. You know, she's one of those people. So she's really smart, and really, really smart, and we call her the Brain Lady, and because she's a neuroscientist, and she does consulting with Fortune 500 companies and people like the U.S. Coast Guard and Frito-Lay and people like Baylor, Scott and White and different people like that and GRG. And we're so honored to have you, Sherry. Come on up, Sherry. Come on up. You guys give her a big welcome, would you? We're so honored to have you with us and thankful that you're here with us. Most importantly is she loves Jesus with all of her heart, and we're really, really thankful for her being here with us. Yeah, give her a really, really big hand. Would you do that? And I'm going to pray for you. Jesus, thank you so much for Sherry, and I pray that you would speak to us through her tonight. Help us to hear you. Give us ears to hear and eyes to see, hearts that are open to you, and brains that function well tonight. In Jesus' strong name, amen.
Amen.
It's all yours.
Yay! Cue the music. That light is really bright. Do y'all have no music? Okay. Well, then we're going to have a sing-along, okay? 'Cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. Awesome! Woo! Okay, so slides up. I want to tell you, there was a young man, he was son of a construction worker in South Carolina, and he leaves everything, this is the early 60s, to go to New York, where he is going to be a famous dancer, songwriter, singer, all the things. And he gets to New York, and all he hears is, no, 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 we don't want you, no, no, and ends up homeless on the street, actually living in Bryant Park, homeless. And so one morning, he's walking through the streets of New York, and he looks up at the skyscrapers, and to him, they look like mountains. And he took out a little piece of paper and scribbled on the piece of paper, "Ain't no mountain high enough." And that was Nick Ashford. Isn't that a great story? I want you to think about for a moment the last 8 years of your life. And I just want you to think about the mountains, your ain't no mountain high enough moments. You know, like the people that came into your life and made a massive difference in a positive way. I hired a coach in 2016. I got married in 2018. A couple of people came into my life that made a massive difference in a positive way. I want you to think about people in your life who came into your life and really let you down. It's just a big letdown. I want you to think about the things that you've been able to accomplish that you never thought was possible, just beyond your imagination. What? I get to do that? I get to go there? I get to see this in my lifetime? And I want you to think about all the things that you took a big risk on, and it failed. Those mountains are everywhere. I use the time frame of 8 years because I was here 8 years ago, and to think of, I would say in my life, the last 8 years have been some of the most transformational years of my life. I got married, which is awesome, because when I was here in 2016, I was about 3 years on the other side of a really horrible divorce, and I would say, I'm not marrying anybody, okay? Like, he's going to have to walk on water and wear a robe. I mean, sometimes he wears a robe, but he doesn't walk on water. But he's amazing. You know, I had 2 teenagers that were going to get through high school, I hoped. Grew our business even more, which is incredible. We love what we do. It's just our calling. And I've dropped a kid off at rehab with everything he had in a Walmart bag. And, you know, you just think about those mountains. So anyway, I just appreciate us being here, you letting us be here. All right, so do you have my slides? Because I wanted to show a little something. So I don't get to control this. And we're going to talk about control in just a minute. It's a hard thing for a lot of us to let go of. But anyway, my name's Sherry Yellin. I live right down the street. So literally, it's about 30 minutes away. We keep our boat just right down the road in the slip. And I wanted to be a college English teacher until I became a college English teacher. If anybody has that experience, then we are one and the same. So, don't you love that? So this is my picture, literally the first day on the job, when it didn't take much convincing when someone, a friend of mine, also named Sherry, asked me to come alongside her. AT&T's manufacturing environment, so that company's come a long way, and we're starting a workplace education program. And in that experience, I started working with people who really struggled to learn, and all I wanted to know was, how does the brain learn? I'll get that answer and move on with my life. The problem is nobody had the answer, and so here I am. If you can just leave those up, maybe, those slides, because this is kind of like a class, all right? This is what I do. I facilitate a lot, but you can go to that next slide. And so when I think about now, like 30 years later, many wrinkles later, still trying to find the answer to how does the brain learn. But we've learned a lot, and that's what I want to talk to you now. Every single day, we get to work with leadership teams, individual leaders, just people who want to be better. And one of the things that we do is help them to learn how to lead, learn, and live the way the brain works best. Because when you do that, you get better results with less effort. And that sounds really good. Or the opposite, you're free to work against how the brain works best, and you're going to create a whole big mess that sometimes takes generations to clean up. And so I would say the number one problem we solve in our business, or we seek to solve in our business, is threat. So I want to share with you a few behaviors. This is the interactive part, okay? So just imagine that someone doesn't feel heard or included. Let's just think about this. It's a 4th grade girl, and all of her friends get to invited to the sleepover, but she doesn't. What kind of behaviors or attitude or feelings would you expect? Sad, hurt, anger, fear? Yeah. Let's say that 4th grader is now a 10th grader, and she learns that her parents are splitting up, and she just can't imagine what her life is going to look like. What kind of behavior might you expect? Depression? Anger? Yes. Yes, substitution. Let's say that 4th grader that became a 10th grader, now she's a 12th grader, and she applies to the school of her dreams. And the answer is no. What kind of behaviors? She feels abandoned, rejected, might really withdraw. We don't know. Might really be motivated. Like, I'll show them. We just don't know, right? And then let's fast forward. Let's say she's 20 years into her career, and she's sacrificed for 20 years for this company. And all of a sudden, her boss comes into her office, accuses her of unethical behavior, and escorts her out the building. The truth is, like, threat in these forms brings out the absolute worst part of ourselves. And I want to say this is the scariest part and the part that really just enthralls me so much. Your brain's default setting is threat. Like the manufacturer setting is threat. And so the undisciplined, untrained mind is going to go to threat. So threat leads us to make really bad decisions. It leads us to be on our worst behavior, and that is why I have a job every day. Every day. Okay, so this is where I thought we would go for the next 5 hours. But then Keith told me I only had 30 minutes, so I better get with it. But y'all, this is, okay. So this is where I thought. We're going to do 3 things. I want to just dig a little bit more into this idea around threat. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what it does to your brain. And then finally, maybe most importantly, I want to give you some really practical tips of how to better navigate those situations where threat gets involved. Sound okay? All right. All right, so let's roll. So your brain on threat, if we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So I just want you to see, this is so true. So underneath this arrow is the prefrontal cortex. And essentially, we'll take a look at it in just a minute. But when your brain is under threat, that part of your brain that allows you to think forward and be the best version of yourself is severely compromised, if not entirely shut down. And so here's the behavior that you start to see. People get defensive. They get overly committed to being right. Like you're never more right than when you're angry. So I so wish I'd been part of the conversation last night after I've heard some of the things coming on, but it's so true. We get really reactive along with being defensive. It compromises our health because it impacts our immune system, which is one of the reasons why you hear about burnout and stress and all of those things. We get stuck. So this is fascinating because your brain, when it's under threat, will automatically go to this place of either or. Listen for it in conversations. Whenever you hear either or I don't know, that means that brain is under threat. So, you could always just say, okay, well, let's put either over here and or over here, and let's just see if there might be some other options in between. And if you ask somebody a question and they say, I don't know, try it when you get home tonight. All you just have to say is, well, you had to guess. They always know. They always know. You can pull it on your kids until they figure out what you're doing, and then they stop. We get very protective of ourselves. Our brain goes into this tunnel, and the biggest thing of it is that we have missed opportunities, right? Because of that, we miss opportunities. You can go to the next slide. I just think it's fascinating to think about this idea of this tunnel vision because your brain's peripheral vision, so our peripheral vision when we're under threat narrows, which allows us to focus on anything that's coming at us to attack us. So if a bear is running at you, you have no problem focusing, right? If your Apple Watch buzzes or your phone starts ringing, you're not paying a thing, you're not paying any attention to it. But what I want you to see is that when your brain is under threat, the exact same thing is happening internally. It's like we go into a tunnel and you can't see what you can't see. That's why it's so important to have people who are having no agenda, that are neutral, that can help you think through those situations. Okay, next slide. I wanted you to kind of see then the opposite. So when your brain is on good threat, and we'll talk about that difference in just a minute, good threat is the threat that motivates you. Like when you know you've got to speak in front of people, you get ready for it. We call this challenge. And when you're in an environment where you are your best self, there's a complete opposite observable behavior. So under that arrow where you were seeing purple in that previous slide, where the brain is dramatically decreased in activity in that part, now you're seeing red, which is a dramatic increase in the prefrontal cortex. So this is where you can be your best self. You can have willpower. That's a good thing. I mean, this is a lot of fruits of the Spirit if you're not picking that up real quick. But you can have willpower not only in keeping your mouth shut when you need to keep it shut and not get thrown out of the tournament because they're 10, you know, but you can also have the willpower to set a goal and then have that daily discipline and persistence and resilience to achieve that goal. You don't have to be right. So you can hear from different perspectives, and it's okay. You're not triggered by it at all. You can be flexible. This is probably your brain on vacation. You're more fluid, right? The ideas can flow, and you're not overly committed to one or the other. Therefore, we have accelerated creativity and innovation. We can see lots of options, lots of ways we could go, and it's also elevating dopamine, which is a really important chemical to focus and allowing us to have even more energy because there's an increase in adrenaline that motivates us to keep doing those same things. So it makes a massive difference. When we're working with leaders of organizations, we will say, why on earth would you create an environment that would compromise the activity in that part of the brain when that's exactly what you're trying to achieve? So on our next slide, I just want to walk through that for a minute, because what's super important here is we understand what's positive threat and what's negative threat. So here's what I've discovered in many, many years of studying this. Negative threat typically has 3 different characteristics. First of all, we are anticipating an adverse or negative consequence. We're worrying. Right? There's something that, and we're so good at that. I don't know if this is true, but I've read it where we repurpose the same 60,000 thoughts every day, and like 95% are negative. And so you got to work at this stuff. This is not going to come naturally. So adverse consequences is characteristic number 1. Second of negative threat is when we feel like we don't have a choice or we don't have a voice in something. We're not in control. And then the third characteristic of negative threat is that there is a lack of clarity. Do you know that your brain really doesn't resist change? Your brain resists confusion. Big difference, right? So listen. Like if we were to add all of those things up, and I didn't type it out on the slide, all those things equals transitions, right? I mean, when Keith called and asked me to talk about transitions, I was like, yeah, let's do it, because, right, sometimes we're not clear. You're going into the unknown. I think that's what actually the word means when you break it down, is to go beyond. So you don't have a clear path, and you don't sometimes feel like you have a lot of choice or a lot of control once you're going down that path, and then if you're anticipating adverse consequences. So I just thought, let's do a visual walkthrough of the pandemic. The pandemic was a beautiful description of what this looks like. So I'm going to start in that top left. We had toilet paper hoarding. It was just totally let me protect myself. And then we have people and all the controversy around vaccination or not to vaccinate. And I have a squad that meets, we go out to dinner a lot. And we were a squad divided, okay? I mean, that was the biggest issue of the year. Then we see it take on a really, really, really serious direction with the racial tensions. And a dear friend of mine lost her son in one of those protests. And then finally, by the end of the year, people are storming the Capitol. What? For those of you who aren't in this country, I'm so sorry. Like, but the pandemic was a case study in what happens to the brain when it's enduring long-term negative stress. Isn't that interesting? So the question always becomes, what do we do about it? What are some things that we can do about that? And I just wanted to bring to you an idea. This is what we see over and over and over and over. And it's usually not what people go to when they think about the best way to navigate transitions or situations where there's not a lot of clarity. So you can go to the next slide, and here it is. I want you to challenge your beliefs. Okay. Do you ever sit around the campfire and talk about, why do we believe what we believe? Nobody ever really does that. But it's so funny to me because, I just want you to say the first word that comes to mind. Relationships are, yes. Change is, Coke or Pepsi? Coke, yes. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up. That's right. But my favorite one to ask is, people are... Okay, so this next slide shows a model that we use a lot in coaching and in the leadership development space. And it looks so simple until it isn't. So let me just build it, because beliefs, you can see, are really at the core. Oftentimes, we want a different result. You might have said a New Year's resolution, maybe not. But whatever result you want, let's say I want to be better at navigating transitions. I'm going to go to Google and I'm going to type it in, and you're going to get, I don't know how many billions of actions, books you could read, all of those things. So a lot of times we want a different result. We were just going to take a different action. But what we know is that that doesn't get you sustainable results. Where the real shift has to happen is in your beliefs. So when we even go into a company, for example, we could go in and we could teach all these classes, but until we shift beliefs, you're not going to see a long-term change. Here's a fun one when you're working with people too, that just get to the core beliefs. It's just faster if I do it myself. And you wonder why you're burned out, okay? So I could go in and teach delegation all day long, but until we shift that belief that delegation really is growing the people around you and all the things there, we're not going to see the result. So then it's fun, because where do those beliefs come from? Experiences. And not just our experiences from the people around us, or experiences from great-great-great-great-grandma, and we don't even know her name, but her beliefs are still in us because she's been passed along. Beliefs are fun. I just always love to ask people, do you have a picture somewhere? If someone were to pull it up, you would say, what was I thinking? If there's anybody in here who's had glamour shots, you've got one. What were we thinking? But beliefs are what's driving results. I sometimes compare beliefs to like the clothes in your closet. Okay? Some of them don't fit anymore. And they're not going to fit. Let it go, right? They're not going to fit. And even if they did, would you want to be wearing those clothes today? I saw something the other day on Facebook, and it was talking about the 80s generation. He said, we conquered the wind like no other generation. The windsuit, you know? So I just want you to, from time to time, reflect on this, because this is where the real change can happen. And sometimes it's good to have a closet clean out. Take it all out and then decide what you want to put back in, you know. Or in the words of the great philosophers, 38 special. Hold on loosely. Hold on loosely. But don't let go. Okay? Evaluate it. All right. So, I want to dig into beliefs and give you some ideas that you may find helpful. So, one of the beliefs that we often have that's directly tied to what I see in our work as a core need. We sometimes have this belief that I need to be right. Like some of us would rather be right than rich. Some of us are going to be like Charlton Heston. That's his name, right? Yes. So if you don't know who that is, he was like a big gun advocate and said something to the effect of, "You'll take this gun when you pry it from my cold, dead hands." Some of us are going to the grave with our beliefs, right? By golly, we may be dead, but we're right. No. So, oh my goodness. What's so funny, though, I find, is that the people who are most dedicated to being right don't think they are. So weird. So weird. So here, I just want you to try on a new belief. I can be right or I can be rich. I mean, are there times where you're right? Of course. You know where I'm going with that, though. Where are we dying over a hill just to be right? And here's some alternatives, which take a lot of stress off. One is, how about us being more interested than interesting? I read something recently where it said, speak, I just want to get it right. Speak like you're right, listen like you're wrong. Isn't that great? And because what's really important is what the people around us care about. What do they care about? Every brain is tuned into the station, WIIFM, all day, 24/7. And, you know, this idea of listening just a little bit longer and staying curious just a little bit longer can go a long way in others getting on board with our vision. Because a great idea doesn't sell itself. Right? It takes people. And this idea of being a problem finder as much as we are a problem solver. As I think leaders who are out in front doing great big things that haven't been done yet, their number one job is not to be the fixer all the time, but rather to be out front discovering problems and building up a team to help you solve it. So need to be right, that's number one. Number two, some of us suffer from this bad, and my husband and I do. I need to be liked. Whew. Some of us have this belief that we're here to be liked. And if this resonates with you, you know. Like if you know, you know. I had this written in my office for a long time. You were not put on the planet to be liked. Now, you know, obviously we can't run around and not be purposefully. But that's not what we're called here to be. We're not called here to be liked. You can think of so many people around us, and sometimes that belief is our measurement on whether or not we're going in the right direction or making the right decisions. So I just wanted to give you some ideas. We gotta, for those of us that suffer from this, you know, we gotta overcome the disease of faux boo. We coined that term in my house, and it's the fear of being unpopular. And then we have an alternative, which is the fear of being uncomfortable. Right? So, FOBU. The truth is, sometimes people leave. Let them go. Right? That really we're called to stay in service to what we're called to do. And that may not be popular at all. There have been a couple of times in my life where I knew I was being called to do something and I didn't feel like I was enough on my own. And I sort of handed that all over to someone else. And therefore, I missed that opportunity. So I would say to some of you in here, trust yourself. Like, trust yourself. The creator of the universe lives inside of you. I write that every single morning. I'm so happy and grateful that the creator of the universe lives within me. Remember that. Trust yourself. All right, number 3. I only have 4, so hang in there a minute. Number 3 belief that I want to say is a lot of the time people think I need to be clear before I move forward. Ugh, that's the worst. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes. Well, they want to be, but they don't. They just kick the can because they're waiting to be clear and to have the website and to, no. We need to move in faith. And I love this acronym of for allowing in the how. Isn't that cool? So we don't always have to be clear. And again, your brain is not going to like that. Your brain likes to be liked, it likes to be right, and it likes to be clear. So it's going to feel off. But just because something feels right doesn't always mean it is right. It might just feel familiar. It might just feel comfortable. Like, anybody in here really good at making everything harder than it needs to be? That's because your brain has been wired like it's got to be hard. And so if it's not hard, I'll make it hard. So, because it feels familiar. And most people will choose unhappiness over uncomfortable every day of the week. Every day. So, I would say the knowing comes in the going. If we were here and we have this vision of being here, and so many of you live this every day, the line is never straight. Whatever made us think it was going to be. It's like this. And then back up. So it's never a straight path. And so, sometimes just having a pocket full of questions can help keep you moving. So if you ever hit that Monday morning overwhelm or Sunday night overwhelm or any other time in the week and you feel like you're kind of drowning and you're in that tunnel, just even asking out loud, where do I need clarity? Because if confusion is the problem, clarity is always the goal. All right, so number 4, belief that I just wanted to talk about is I need to be in control. And I will say this, here's an alternative belief. You can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both in equal proportion at the same time. So, I hate this, but it's so true. It's your vision. It's your company. But how are you ever going to grow? You're going to have to trust others to help you do it. And they won't ever have the vision you have, probably. They won't ever do it exactly the way you would have. But I think it was Dan Martin that wrote, 80% done by someone else is 100% awesome. Yeah. So I struggle with this because I added to our team and last year and have somebody and he was doing a session and it wasn't exactly the way I would have done it, but it was good and he was doing it, so it's great. Here's just a couple of questions. Where are you trying to control an outcome that really isn't yours to control? Like, we can't want someone's success more than they do. And I make a good codependent poster child. I mean, I'm good at it. I would say, too, is asking yourself, by saying yes to that, what are you saying no to? And the opposite, if you said no to the controlling, what could you say yes to? And then the last one here on this is staying committed but not attached. Like, I am 100% committed and 100% unattached. That means, yeah, you have to feel that, don't you? I think about even with your kids, you're 100% committed, but when they become adults, that's what we're dealing with now, you got to be 100% unattached. Or if it's somebody on your team, I'm committed to your success, but I'm not attached to your choices. So the last thing I wanted to share with you is the other thing that I find fascinating about your brain. Because your brain has an experience, and your brain is an amazing storyteller. It's going to make up a story in milliseconds. So what happens is our brain creates a story about the experience. And now our beliefs, actions, and results are not tied to the actual experience. They're tied to the meaning we gave the experience. So before we attach a meaning, give it a story, a narrative, if we could even tap the brakes maybe 10 seconds, we could have a very different result a lot of the time, especially in times of transition. So here's some of my favorite questions. What meaning am I giving this? Whether that is not getting invited to the slumber party, not getting into your school, family going through a crisis, losing a job. Like, we can always pause and ask, what meaning am I giving this? Because if all things work together for good, then all things work together for good. The other thing is, like, what meaning do I want to give this? So these are just good questions to have in your pocket. Another great question that I love is, does this deserve my attention, or does this deserve my energy? Because I think we wake up every morning with this special, precious commodity called your energy. And we just can't give some here and give some here, and here you take some. I did a class, it was last year, and it was actually on Halloween. And I had a video of somebody like the kids trick-or-treating. So that's how that works here. We give candy, and kids, because they don't have enough candy, come and get more. And that's our tradition around here. So I had a video of a woman that just holds out the candy bowl, and kids are just, And I said, sometimes that's how we are with our energy. Here, you take some, and you take some, and you take some. But a lot of things were just really our attention. Good question to always ask is, what do I know to be true? Because sometimes, just a little bit more information could create a very different story. And then the one that I really love is, how do I respond in alignment with who I want to be? So if I lived with a very successful addict for almost 25 years. And I lived on this ride. Now, I can't blame him because I kept going to the ticket booth, right? Getting right back on. hoping the roller coaster would be different, but it wasn't. So that's on me. That's my bad. But after I got out of that, one of the things that was so important to me was to be almost unflappable, just like steadfast. I just didn't want to be triggered anymore. I didn't want to live in that world anymore. So when life throws you some curveballs, asking, how do I respond in alignment? Who has committed to being steadfast? Or, whatever your words are, Be a good idea to actually write those down and have them up somewhere where you could see them a lot of the time. So I just, I'm really going to wrap, but I would say, going back to those ain't no mountain high enough moments. The thing about it is, anytime you get to the top of a mountain and you look out, what do you usually see? More peaks, right? More mountains to climb. And just a few things that we've learned to be true to help navigate those transitions is, first of all, don't climb alone. Okay? Don't go up that mountain alone. It's not safe. Another thing that I would say is if you got to climb over that mountain, enjoy the view. Right? I mean, never waste a crisis. If you're going to go through it, let's wring out every last bit of goodness and learning that we can. And then the third thing is just focus on what's in front of you and really use recognizing how your brain does play tricks on you. It can't be trusted a lot of the time. And just keeping your focus on the things over which you can control. So I wanted to wrap with my favorite version of the Serenity Prayer, which is grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know it's me. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. That was incredible. Don't climb alone. That's why we have each other. It's so awesome. Thank you, Sherry. So